Now we are in the enzymes. For the last class we studied about classification of enzymes. Altogether, if you look at in the classification, as we discuss the classification, if you look at carefully into the last class video, altogether we studied 6 classes. There are many classes, of course, mainly we studied about 6 classes, and each class it's divided into again 3 to 14 subclasses. Each class is divided into again 3 to 14 subclasses. Mainly, of course, there are many classes, but mainly divided into 6 classes. Each class again divided into 3 to 14 subclasses. Now, if you take the subclasses, of course, for the last class, if you observe carefully, we studied about glucose 6 phosphatase. Glucose 6 phosphatase having an enzyme code 2712. So, here 2 refers to class, 7 refers to subclass, 1 refers to subclass. What I am trying to say? Every enzyme has its own enzyme code. So, if for example, if you take glucose 6 phosphatase or glucose 6 phosphate transferase, glucose 6 phosphatase, glucose 6 phosphate transferase, it has an enzyme code of 2712. 2 is nothing but the class, 7 is nothing but the subclass, 1 is nothing but subclass, 2 is nothing but serial number. 2 is nothing but a serial number. Every enzyme has its own code to refer. That code, for example, for this enzyme 2712, 2 refers to class, 7 refers to subclass, 1 refers to subclass, 2 refers to serial number. Now, so we studied for the last video all 6 classes. Now, in enzymes, let us study about inhibition. Okay, the substance which inhibits the activity of enzyme the substance which inhibits the activity of enzyme, it's called inhibitor. It's called inhibitor. I repeat again, the substance which inhibits the activity of enzyme, it's called inhibitor. So, the process of inhibiting the enzyme activity, it's called inhibition. So, here what you have to understand, there may be some substance when it is combining with the enzyme, it reduces the activity of enzyme or it completely blocks the activity of enzyme not to combine with substrate, and that particular substance is called inhibitor, and the process is called as inhibition. Generally, enzyme inhibition, it is of 3 types. It is of 3 types. We take competitive enzyme inhibition, and then non-competitive enzyme inhibition, and including feedback enzyme inhibition. So, altogether how many categories we have? 3 categories: competitive enzyme inhibition, non-competitive enzyme inhibition and the third one is called as feedback enzyme inhibition. So these are the three types of inhibition of enzymes. So what's the first one? Let us discuss one after the other. First one is competitive enzyme inhibition. So what is competitive enzyme inhibition? Here inhibitor looks similar to substrate. What we are trying to say here? Inhibitor. What is an inhibitor? Substance which inhibits the activity of enzyme, it's called inhibitor. Now the inhibitor which look exactly similar to that of substrate. That means inhibitor ditto scenario of similar copy of the substrate. So here then this inhibitor binds to, I write I for inhibitor. Inhibitor binds to active site of enzyme or substrate binding site of enzyme. E for enzyme. So what exactly meaning of this? Inhibitor binds to active site of enzyme or substrate binding site of enzyme. That means substrate is not coming and binding. Who is binding here? Inhibitor is coming and binding to the active site of enzyme. Thereby what happens? And inhibits enzyme activity and inhibits enzyme activity. So let us talk, for example, succinate dehydrogenase. This is nothing but the substrate or the enzyme. Succinate is a substrate. Succinate dehydrogenase is nothing but the enzyme. Now substrate is being replaced by malonate. It's been replaced by malonate. What does it mean here? Succinate dehydrogenase is an enzyme, succinate is a substrate, malonate exactly look like a substrate. Now instead of succinate dehydrogenase going and combining with succinate, it will come and bound to malonate. I will write the same example just about to this, just have a careful look at this. So what are we discussing now? Competitive enzyme inhibition. So I am writing here. Look at the example what I am writing carefully here. This is an enzyme. What is the enzyme we are talking about? Succinate dehydrogenase is an enzyme. What is this component? Succinate. Now malonate also look exactly like a succinate. Okay. So where exactly succinate will go and bound? It will go and bound to the active site. Instead of succinate going and bounding to the active site, malonate also structurally resemble to succinate. Instead of this, malonate will go and bound to this. So here it forms. So this is enzyme, and along with that you find malonate. So substrate will not get a chance to combine with active site, malonate will go and combine. As a result, here substrate is not getting converted into product. So it inhibits the reaction, so it is called as inhibitor. Malonate act as an inhibitor. Now this is nothing but the enzyme what I wrote here, and malonate is nothing but what? Inhibitor. Malonate is nothing but what? Inhibitor. Inhibitor will replace the succinate by blocking the enzyme succinate dehydrogenase. Thereby it inhibits the complete reaction. Substrate will not get converted into product. That means here inhibitor is in competition with substrate. That's why it's called competitive enzyme inhibition. I hope all of you got. Remember these two examples. Succinate exactly looks similar like a malonate. Succinate is replaced by malonate. Now substrate will not get an opportunity to combine with active site or binding site of an enzyme. So no conversion of substrate into product. It inhibits the reaction. That's why it's called competitive enzyme inhibition. I hope all of you got it. Now let's go to the second one. What is the second one? Non-competitive enzyme inhibition. What is non-competitive enzyme inhibition? In this case, what I wrote? I for inhibitor. Inhibitor does not combine with, does not look similar to that of substrate. Does not look similar to that of substrate. Substrate is different, inhibitor is different. Then inhibitor does not combine with active site. Inhibitor does not combine with active site. Then where it will combine? Inhibitor combines with other than active site. Other than active site. And changes globular structure of enzyme. Changes the globular structure of enzyme. So I am writing for this here. Let us take once again the example. Imagine this is nothing but the enzyme. Okay, so this is nothing but the substrate. This is substrate. Let me take an example. This is nothing but inhibitor. As usual, you know this is active site. Then what happens? So here, first of all, inhibitor does not look similar to that of substrate. That's why it's called non-competitive. Inhibitor structure is totally different from the structure of a substrate. Both are different. That's why it's called non-competitive. In the first case, inhibitor binds to active site. What we have written now? Inhibitor does not combine with active site. Definitely inhibitor will bind, but not with the active site. Then where? Combines with other than active site. It will not combine with active site other than active site. That means it combines here. So somewhere here. Now, so here substrate is ready. But what happens when it is combined other than active site? Changes the globular structure of enzyme. That means instead of this, the enzyme structure changes like this. Then substrate will not fit into enzyme. Substrate will not fit into enzyme. This is inhibitor. Okay, so this is an active site. Inhibitor will not combine with active site. It combines other than active site somewhere on the structure of enzyme. And after combining other than active site, it changes the globular structure of the enzyme. It pulls aside. Thereby active site structure alters. Thereby substrate cannot fit and combine with the active site. So it cannot combine now with this. As a result, substrate cannot be converted into product. So this is what is called as what? Non-competitive enzyme inhibition. It's referred non-competitive enzyme inhibition. So here you can take some of the examples. Now I am writing here. Now you can take examples like Copo and Silvo along with that even mercury. So these are the compounds which act as non-competitive inhibitors. So what are the examples? Copper, silver, mercury act as non-competitive inhibitors. Now let us go with feedback inhibition. In feedback inhibition, let us take that A is giving rise to B, B is giving rise to C is giving rise to D is giving rise to E. E will affect the first enzyme of reaction. What does it mean? End product, what's produced here, it's beyond the limit of concentration. End product itself controls the action of first enzyme. For example, you know glucose is getting converted into pyruvic acid. Let us take A, B, C, D, E and all that. E is nothing but what we call, or let us take photosynthesis, carbon dioxide and water. Finally, what produced E is nothing but what? Sucrose. Now, all mesophyll cells are fully filled with sucrose. There is no space. At that time, what happens? Sucrose itself acts as a controller, inhibits the first enzyme of the reaction. When first enzyme is being blocked, then there is no production of A into B, B into C, C into D and all that. And it is everything happens as a part of homeostatic control. So here in this case, what is homeostatic control? To balance the catalysis of a chemical reaction. Here sucrose is fully produced, no more mesophyll cell ready to take their food. Then sucrose end product itself will control the enzyme of the first reaction. So that complete chain of reaction will be inhibited or stopped as a part of homeostatic control to balance the chemical reaction. This is what we call it as feedback enzyme inhibition. So we have altogether three categories. What are they? Competitive enzyme inhibition, non-competitive enzyme inhibition, and then what we have is feedback enzyme inhibition. So sometimes you will get a question, which enzyme inhibitors helps in controlling bacterial pathogens? Then try to remember. The answer is competitive enzyme inhibitors, which are used to control bacterial pathogen. In some of the infections caused by bacteria, the antibiotics or the medicines what we take are mostly they do the mechanism called competitive enzyme inhibition. So we discussed about inhibitors. Now let us continue with cofactors. So what exactly meant by cofactors? Here the protein part itself we call enzyme. Itself is called as coenzyme. Now before to that, let me give you full clarity. 1 second. So here if you take coenzyme is the one which combines with the protein part. Let me tell you. So if you take, this is the structure of the protein. Mostly we take tertiary structure of the protein. Now in this you find two parts. One is called protein part and other one is called non-protein part. So here the protein part of the enzyme, it's called apoenzyme. The protein part of the enzyme is called apoenzyme, and mostly non-protein part of the enzyme it's called as coenzyme. So whenever we write coenzyme plus apoenzyme itself is nothing but holoenzyme. I repeat. The protein part, so you know all enzymes are made up of proteins. If you talk about enzyme, it's not completely total part of protein. Some part of protein part we find and some non-protein part we find. Protein part itself is called apoenzyme and mostly non-protein part attached to enzyme, it's called coenzyme. Nothing guys, no need to worry. This is the structure of the enzyme. Try to remember, protein part is apoenzyme, non-protein part is coenzyme. So, when you combine coenzyme with the apoenzyme, now totally it is a structure called as holoenzyme. Totally it is a structure called as holoenzyme. Now, what we discussed inhibitors, inhibitors will reduce the activity of enzyme. Inhibitors will inhibit the enzyme activity, but here cofactors increases the enzyme activity. Increases the enzyme activity. So, what are these cofactors? Now, look at these cofactors. Cofactors are also three types. Let us discuss in detail. I am writing here. The first one is called as prosthetic groups. Prosthetic groups. Then the second type is called coenzymes. And then metal ions. Okay. Inhibitors will inhibit the enzyme activity. Cofactors increases the enzyme activity. What are the three types? What do they do? Structure, if you look at what they do, structure holoenzyme is influenced by both coenzyme and apoenzyme. Apoenzyme is protein part, but when apoenzyme is combined with non-protein part, this will increases the activity of enzyme. The enzyme can combine with more number of substrates, thereby there is a production of more number of products. Let us talk about first one, prosthetic groups. Now, if you take the prosthetic group, let us study what are these prosthetic groups. Now, these prosthetic groups are nothing but organic compounds. These are nothing but organic compounds and they tightly bound to apoenzyme. Prosthetic groups are nothing but the organic substances, they are organic compounds very tightly bound to apoenzyme. So, for example, here you can take hydrogen peroxide H2O2, it has been lead to formation of water and oxygen. This has been catalyzed by two enzymes, peroxidase and catalase. Peroxidase and catalase. Hydrogen peroxide divided into water and oxygen with the help of peroxidase and catalase. Okay. So, here in this case the heme is a group which controls, heme is a moiety or heme is a group, heme act as a moiety for activating peroxidase and catalase. That means here if you look at, this is a protein part called as apoenzyme. To the apoenzyme, the prosthetic group is tightly bonded. What is this group? Prosthetic group. Prosthetic group is tightly bounded, as a result the enzyme activity increases. Again I repeat here, prosthetic groups are nothing but organic compounds, they tightly bound to apoenzyme and increases the activity of the enzyme. For example, hydrogen peroxide converting into water and oxygen, and here the two enzymes catalyze these reactions. What are they? Peroxidase and catalase. Heme is a moiety group which increases the efficiency of these two enzymes. What are they called? Prosthetic groups. Let us come to the second category. What are that? Coenzymes. Let us discuss about coenzymes. Even these are same like prosthetic groups. Prosthetic groups are also organic compound and coenzymes are also organic compounds, and here they are transient or we say loosely bound to apoenzyme. Loosely bound to apoenzyme. Transience means very light. The number of bonds or the weak bonds which are present are very loosely attached, not so tightly bonded, then they are called as what? Coenzymes. So here you can take most of the coenzymes are vitamins. Most of them are vitamins. Like for example, if you take FAD, NAD, vitamin, niacin, all this will come. Most of them are vitamins, FAD, NAD and niacin. So here if you look at here, this is apoenzyme and this here the coenzymes will come very loosely. This is coenzyme. Not so tightly, very loosely they just combine and lead to the formation of the protein structure that also increases the efficiency of enzyme. Remember, these are also organic compounds. They are very loosely bound to the apoenzyme or transient. Most of them are vitamins, example FAD, NAD and vitamins niacin. Coming to metal ions. Metal ions also very tightly bound to apoenzyme. For example, you know zinc is a metal required for carboxypeptidase, or we say carboxy anhydrase, right. So whenever apoenzyme it's been combined with metal ions will increases the activity of enzyme. When enzyme activity increases, definitely more number of substrate molecules can be converted into product. So this is nothing but example for metal ions. These are nothing but cofactors. Again I repeat cofactors. Every enzyme will contain two parts. The protein part is called apoenzyme, non-protein part is called coenzyme. When apoenzyme coenzyme combines, it leads to holoenzyme. It is of three types: prosthetic groups, coenzymes and metal ions. Remember, the prosthetic groups and metal ions are tightly bonded and they are prosthetic groups are organic compounds. These are the examples to remember. Peroxidase and catalase involved in breakdown of hydrogen peroxide into water and oxygen. For this, heme is a moiety group which act as a prosthetic group for the activation of these two enzymes. Coenzymes are also organic compounds, but they are loosely bonded. For example, most of the coenzymes are vitamins. Example, FAD, NAD, vitamin niacin, you know, flavin, adenine dinucleotide, nicotinamide, adenine dinucleotide, vitamin niacin. These are the examples which act as coenzymes. And metal ions also tightly bonded. Some of the metal like zinc, or you can write what not, manganese and cobalt, copper, all these metal ions act as a activators for some type of enzymes, like for example zinc if you take, it is an activator for carboxypeptidase or carboxy anhydrase. When zinc metal ion combines, activity of the enzyme increases. So these are nothing but types of cofactors. Sir, stop cheyalna. Ee chapter ayipindi. Now last class we have a video called enzymes. Now let us go with the next chapter, mineral nutrition. It is not the next concept, this is next chapter. Let us go with the next chapter, mineral nutrition. Now here generally plants are in need of the soil. Soil contains different type of minerals. So we all know that plant metabolism, if you take, there are many metabolisms like photosynthesis, respiration, transportation, transpiration. For this all metabolic processes to enhance to happen in the plant, soil is a major source for providing all types of minerals. Previously if you look at, there was a scientist Van Sachs, or simply we can say it is called Sachs experiment. Julius Van Sachs we call. Julius Van Sachs. Julius von Sack is the one who has done the experiment. It's called Sack's experiment. Now, in the Sack experiment, they studied the technique called as hydrophonics. They studied the technique called as what? Hydrophonics. What is this hydrophonics? They have taken the beaker. So, they got the wonderful imagination saying that if every research it begins with the thought. So, Julius von Sack, he thought that it may be possible to grow the plant without soil, or it may not be possible to grow the plant without soil, with the soil, without soil. So, they tried an experiment, they tried to grow the plant without soil. So, simply what they have taken is, they have taken the test tube or the container which is filled with nutrient medium, a container which is filled with a nutrient medium. Now, to this nutrient medium, they have supplied with oxygen, a fresh air, supplied with oxygen. Now, when this oxygen is added, the oxygen got dissolved into this, it formed dissolved oxygen, and at the same time this has been checked with even pH control is there, and other conditions are adjusted like nutrient, temperature, atmospheric pressure, everything is being adjusted, and they have taken a rooted plant and they simply dipped into the container having nutrient medium. So, here, so this is called a soil free nutrient medium. So, the growth of the plant, so what is hydroponics? The growth of the plant in a soil free nutrient medium itself is called as a technique called hydroponics. Hydro means water, phonics means balanced with the nutrients, so it is called hydroponics. Soil free nutrient medium, so there is no soil, it is fully enriched with only nutrients. So, that is the technique is called hydroponics, and initially they thought they were not successful. When they dipped the plant was live for few days. After that there was wilting and plant completely died, and again they repeated the experiment with several set of different type of plants. Some are hydrophytes, some are mesophytes, and some are xerophytes, and finally they were succeeded in developing the technique called hydroponics. So, they came to know that some of the plants, for them soil is not necessary, even it is possible to grow them only in nutrient media. Means if you supply all nutrients which are required for the plant, nutrient media means what it contains? It contains inorganic salts, along with that what you call vitamins and different type of elements, and nearly 60 different type of elements which are present in the soil. They play a vital role and different metabolic processes. So, they understood that soil has different type of elements, approximately 60 different type of elements play a vital role in most of the plant metabolic processes. So, the technique of employing the plant in soil free nutrient medium itself is called as what? Hydroponics. Now, this hydroponics technique was successful, especially in the plant like lettuce, seedless cucumber. Along with that, even they were very much successful in the first step itself, even in employing the technique to tomato. So, initially in the very first step of experiment, they were successful in producing the lettuce in free of soil, even they were successful producing seedless cucumber, and even that enhanced the formation of tomatoes without soil in the enriched nutrient medium. That itself is called as what? Hydroponics. Then scientists, a later era of the scientists, they realized the importance of minerals. Okay, soil is the base, but soil contains nutrients. Nutrients are essential. If only nutrients are provided, definitely there is an every metabolism can be well taken care by nutrients. Then they started focusing much on nutrients. What are the important mineral nutrients essential for plant? They started studying what are the nutrients essential for the plant. Every plant has its own specific composition of the minerals. The same composition if you apply to the other plants may not grow because every plant has a specific composition of nutrients. Now, so here if you look at what is a thing that you can say, generally if you look at essentiality criteria, or you can say criteria for essentiality. How do you say the element is essential or not? How do you say the element is essential or not? How do you say that okay, we have soil has some thousands and million number of elements. Among all elements, which element is essential for the plant? How do we come to know? So, to know whether element is essential or not, certain criteria we have taken into consideration. What are they? The first and very important thing is the element should play very important role in growth and reproduction. Very important role in growth and reproduction. Every element should play a very important role in growth and reproduction. That means without this element, life cycle cannot be completed. Without this, life cycle cannot be completed. That means the plant cannot complete its life cycle without this element. Then it is called essential element. Then the element said to be very specific. What's the meaning of specific? It will do a specific metabolic function. Meaning here it is not replaceable. It is not replaceable. That means what is the function done by a particular element? If it is absent, that function may not be performed by any other element. It is not replaceable. Every element, every mineral, it is very specific in its function. Next, apart from this, even it plays a direct role in metabolism. It plays very direct role in metabolism. And like what is meant by metabolism? You know, major metabolic processes which happens in the plant are photosynthesis, respiration, transpiration, transportation and all will come. So, these elements when they play direct role in metabolism, then they refer to as what? Generally essential elements. So, generally if you look at, for example, you know that sodium, selenium and strontium, right. So, here silicon, even you can take silicon, these are called as beneficial elements. Why these are called as beneficial elements? Generally these may not occur most commonly in the soil. In case of course sodium is the most common one, but some soils contain selenium, some soil additionally contain silicon, and in especially nuclear power plants, in nuclear testings and all that, a radioactive material even we find in the surrounding soil. It may be different type of radioactive material. For our example, we are taking strontium. So, what is NPP? Simple example, nuclear power plants where nuclear test will conduct in the surrounding environment. We may have different type of radioactive materials, for example like strontium. When these elements are there, the excess quantity they may be very harmful to the plant, but within the quantity they act as very much beneficial to the plants. So, they present very rarely in the soil, so but they are beneficial in low concentration, so they are called as what? Beneficial elements. Now, apart from this, now if you look at in generally based upon the most important functions what they do in the metabolism, elements are also further classified into different categories. Let us discuss with them. Classification of elements. Classification of elements. Some of the elements, they are called as structural elements. Some of the elements are called as structural elements. What exactly mean by structural element? Now, they play a very important role in, IMP means important role in structure and function of cell. Structure and function of cell. Like in the structure means in the formation of proteins, carbohydrates, amino acids and all that. So they are called as what? Structural elements. They are the basic skeletal structure which plant requires in major quantity, macro in quantity. So which all will come under structural elements. Let us take carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen. These are called as what? Structural elements. Next, some other elements are called as energy related elements. Some are called energy related elements. What are energy related elements? For example, if you take magnesium, magnesium very much essential for synthesis of chlorophyll. It is essential for synthesis of chlorophyll. Similarly, even if you take, apart from this one, even you can take that.